All right, let's talk about high school football because today is the first day of Texas high school football, and we are very excited around here. We're an excitable bunch usually. There's an extra little pep in our step. Max, did you decide you're going to a game tonight?
No. This is, I don't know if you've been in the Slack. Did I even bring it up in the Slack? I don't even remember. Yeah, I did. Standing room only, basically in every press box.
Well, everyone's got fever, man.
And it's fine.
There's not enough great games out there.
I've got a scoreboard project to work on, so it's fine.
Are you going to go to a game-ish?
Probably so.
Yeah. I will be at Jefferson in Pittsburgh tonight, so if you're in Pittsburgh, come and say hi. I will be at Pittsburgh Hot Links beforehand. That's free advertising for Pittsburgh Hot Links. That's the new strategy of the show is we're going to start shouting out like businesses we like and hope that they just send us money after the fact. Anyway, I will be out there, and one thing that I'm very interested in is, and I think one thing we've had our eye on since UIL realignment came out in February, are teams that are dropping down in classifications. And there's a reason why we get so excited about those teams. I think that it's pretty easy to explain. You're going from being the big fish or the small fish in the big pond to being the big fish in the small pond. Just by losing a few kids, right? Or the numbers moving in such a way that suddenly, instead of being one of the thinner teams and having one of the lowest enrollments in a classification, you now have a higher enrollment, and you have depth that makes it more of an advantage than a disadvantage. Now, enrollment's not everything, but it is certainly important in Texas high school football. Now, I got a text from a Fox producer today, and he asked me, hey, has a team ever dropped down a classification and won a state championship the next year? And in my mind, I go, well, yeah, it happens all the time. But then I had to that's not what I can text him because he needs this for a graphic, right? This has to be accurate. So I dove into the numbers. The last 3 realignments, there have been 4 state champions who had dropped down a classification in the last realignment. In 2016, it was Highland Park. If you remember, Highland Park had a 2-year stint in 6A. They dropped back down to 5A, and in 2016, they won the state championship with that great win over Temple. There was that. 2014, it happened when Canadian dropped down to 2A. If you remember, Canadian goes from 2000 and they go from 2000. Is that correct? I want to make sure I get this right. They dropped down from 3A down to 2A, and then they won a state championship in 2A in 2014. And then it happened twice in 2012. In 2012, Denton Guyer dropped from 5A to 4A, and they won the 4A Division I title in 2012. Their first of 2 titles, by the way, back-to-back. And Stephenville did it in 2012. Stephenville dropped from 4A to 3A. They won the 3A D1 title in 2012. So it does happen. But my question for you guys is, that's 4 champions in the span. You have an opportunity of, theoretically, we won't count the 6-man because if you're 6-man, you can't really drop down classifications. You can, but that's a different ball game. So that's 30 state champions, right? You can't drop down from 6A, so you remove 6 of them. That's 24 state champions that could theoretically be won by drop downs. 4 did win those state championships. Are we overstating what a classification drop means?
I don't think so.
Yeah, because just looking at our own rankings, I think we're pretty weighted in our expectations of, obviously we have Lufkin number 1 in 5A, Division 1.
Division 1, yeah.
But when you look at Hearn, somebody dropping down from 3A to 2A, they're 8th, right? We expect them to be competitive. I don't think we're overrating I don't think we're making necessarily any claims that they're a favorite or that they're going to make a state run. It's possible. We have them in the top 10. But they should theoretically be able to compete at a high level in that classification. I think that's all we're saying, honestly, is that they have the resources to be able to instantly put their names out there.
And another example would be Atlanta, right?
Sure.
Speaking of East Texas, Atlanta drops from 4A down to 3A. We have them, despite the fact that they were 5 and 6 last year. Now they do bring back some players. That's certainly part of it. But we have them 4th in the state.
Right. But is the overall premise of the question weighted unfairly? Like, a state championship is an insanely high bar, and that's sort of like where your mind jumps immediately. But like to go back to Hearn, you jump down, you're immediately 8th in the next classification. I mean, that's a huge deal.
Right.
You know what I mean?
True.
Like,
that's true.
That's a big deal for programs. I think sometimes when we have these conversations, we can get too wrapped up in can you win a title or not, and if you can't, are we blowing everything out of proportion. I think I think you have to flip it around.
I agree with that.
If you immediately jump into the top 10 by dropping down a classification, I don't think you can overrate.
Because here's another example of a team that I think had a great year after dropping down is Yoakum.
Yeah.
Yoakum in 2016, when they dropped from 4A to 3A, what happened in 2016? Yeah. They played for a title. Yeah. Did they win the title? No, but at the same time, to get to a state championship game, that alone is an impressive feat. Manville was another team in 2016 that had a fantastic year after dropping down. But it's interesting because I think that there's this idea, and I think it's a correct idea. It's based on history that if you drop down a classification, you're going to be an instant contender. The reason this comes up, the reason I got the text from the Fox producer, is because of Lufkin, right? Because they start the year number 1 in 5A Division 1, ahead of both state champions, right? They're ahead of College Station. They're ahead of Highland Park. Mm-hmm. That is high expectations, but at the same time, I think that when you go from I really think that being on that other side of that enrollment split can really play a big factor.
Sure.
Not necessarily in your top-end talent. You obviously have to have the top-end talent, but in the depth. Mm-hmm. Because the depth is ultimately, especially at the higher levels, the 6A or the 5A level, you've got to have depth and you've got to be able to rotate bodies through and sustain injuries and keep on plugging in order to get to what it's going to be a great year. I think that, we say it all the time, that I think people don't necessarily recognize how long a high school football season is.
Right.
Like if you win a state championship, you played an NFL season. Mm-hmm. You played 16 games.
Yeah.
So you've got to have that depth, and I think that having the depth of dropping down a classification is something that is something that I think is I think properly weighted in our rankings and something that we reflect. Denton Ryan was another example of a team that dropped down a couple of years ago.
And I think, it's not like we're plucking, just because Lufkin is a drop down. They had a great run last year.
Right.
They were 1 point away from beating Longview, and Longview was 3 points away from going to the state title game. But it was very close. They were a fantastic 6A team. They were going to be highly ranked in 6A, and so it wasn't just this is a random 6A team that might have made the playoffs. It was a 6A team that was already probably going to be highly ranked in 6A, dropping down to 5A.
And that's another. I'm glad you brought that point. It's like, for example, there's another 4A drop down. Dieball is dropping down to 3A, but we don't have Dieball in the top 20 because, we think they could be okay, but they've only got 5 starters back on both sides of the ball.
Right.
They're 6-4 year ago. It matters what you have as well.
Sure.
Yeah, and Lehman Saunders, our 6-man expert, brings up a great point, and it's case by case, but it really does make a big difference. He says it is very easy for expectations to instantly be higher if you drop down, but the reality is your new district or region might actually be harder, depending on the area of the state you're in, and this is relevant to every classification. I think he's absolutely right.
100%. That with realignment, it doesn't, there's not a straight chute that you go down, that you go, okay, you're going to drop down from here, that means you go into here. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, when you drop down, things get shuffled all over the place, including your district alignment, including your regional alignment. Yep. And once you do that, things could get theoretically tougher, even though you're playing smaller teams.
Yeah, and Tony Blaylock made the point, too. He goes, ask Friendswood and Hightower if moving down made their lives any easier.
Yeah.
So I think it's a great point.
Yeah, exactly. So we are Texas high school football is on the horizon. It starts tonight, and we're very excited. But it's just one more thing that I've got on my mind as I'm going to be watching Lufkin tomorrow night on Fox Sports Southwest with as they play Longview. I'm just interested to see what they look like and if they look the part of a state champion, state title contender. So.